On this episode of Piston Head Garage, I'm going to start removing some unnecessary components from the engine bay, and we're starting with this right here. What's up guys, I'm Garrett and welcome to another episode of Piston Head Garage. This is episode 2 of my Skyline build, where today we're going to start removing some unnecessary components from the engine bay and getting it ready for the new engine. The first thing I wanted to address was the anti-lock brake system. Kind of went over it in my head a little bit and decided that I was going to get rid of it. In order to do that, I need to remove the pump unit and all the lines that are going to it, and then run new lines to replace all the excessively long lines that are running through the engine bay, taking up room and making the place look ugly. There's a couple options for doing that. One of them would be to buy some hard line, bend your lines and get new fittings and make your own lines and do it that way. And that's a very professional way to do it, and it looks really nice if done correctly, but unfortunately I just don't really have the tools or the skills in order to do that myself. So I went with a little bit of a simpler option. I have purchased the GK Tech ABS Delete Kit. It's an Australian-based company. They make really nice products. If you look at these lines here, they're steel-braided lines, Teflon lined. The quality is amazing. The fittings are really nice. Everything looks good. And so what this does is replaces all your hard lines up front with these steel-braided lines, which gives you a little bit of flexibility. They can fit in multiple cars. This is designed for mostly Skylines, but you can technically use this in various applications. And the nice thing about it is everything is cut to length the way you need it to be. It comes with a T-fitting to split the front brakes, and it also comes with a package of retainers here, so you can actually clamp the line along the inside of the engine bay and tie it all up. So I really like that kit. It was a little bit expensive, but I think it's going to be worth it. It's going to simplify things. I know everything's just going to screw up together and work. So in order to do that, of course, I've got to remove all the lines that are in there. So let's go over there and take a look at that. Alright, so I'm not going to go over this in too much detail. Right over here is the anti-lock brake pump. And you can see if you follow these lines across the firewall, the master cylinder is right here. So of course this is done because there's just not that much room. So they had to put the brake pump on the other side of the engine bay, which just leaves all these lines there to look kind of ugly, and I'm not really a big fan of them. That and ABS isn't really that necessary for a car like this. It's more for driving in conditions where the wheels would lock up more often. I don't think I'm going to be driving it in the wintertime, so I don't think I really need it that much. Also, the ABS system actually adds quite a bit of weight, so that'll be a benefit there too. I'll drop a few pounds at least. So in order to do this, basically the two lines that are coming out of the brake master there, those are going to get replaced, and then the T-fitting will come down just beside the fuel filters right here. It'll go just behind that, and then there's a line that will come up. There'll be one line that will go across the firewall down to where the factory brake line goes out to the passenger side wheel, and then the same thing on the other side. The driver's side line will be replaced with the GK Tech line. So it should be pretty straightforward. If you've never done any work on brakes before, it's not that complicated if you're just unbolting and bolting stuff like I'm doing. The key here is to make sure you have extra brake fluid at the ready, and don't let your master cylinder drain all the way, because if it does, it just makes for bleeding a bigger pain in the end. Overall, the entire install should take probably half an hour to 45 minutes. So let's get started. I decided to start with the rear brakes by fishing the new line from the brake master down to the T-fitting on the chassis. Then I removed the rear brake line from the master and attached the new line using the banjo bolt provided. After that, all I had to do was remove the stock brake line from the T-fitting and then attach the GK Tech line in its place. Now onto the front brakes. I started by disconnecting the factory line from inside the wheel wells. It's basically the same thing on both sides, so I'm only going to show you the one. Once the hard line was removed, I fed the GK-Tech line through the existing grommet and attached to the factory brake hose. Once I had finished both sides, I then removed the factory brake lines from the ABS unit and removed the ABS unit. Okay guys, so next up, we've got to remove the factory engine crossmember right here. The reason why I'm doing that is because the engine that is going in here will not mount to this crossmember. Now, a lot of guys, the few I've seen before that have done this kind of swap have custom made a crossmember for this, or modified the existing one, I mean. But I don't have access to the fabrication equipment or the skills that I would really need to do that properly. So I've kind of cobbled together something that looks like it should work. So in order to do that, I need to replace this subframe with a different one. So in order to get it out, it's pretty straightforward. There's just some clips here for the power steering lines. There's some fasteners holding the power steering rack on. I'm going to try to kind of just loosen the rack off and push it aside without removing it entirely. And then once I've done that, there's a lower control arm for the suspension on either side, which will get unbolted. And then last but not least, bolt here, here, there, and there. Those come out and the whole thing should just drop right out. And then the new one, in theory, because it is another Nissan, should bolt right back up in its place. I decided to start by removing the lower control arms from the crossmember. Next, I removed the fasteners holding the power steering rack clamps down. After that, I made sure to unclip the factory hard lines for the power steering from the crossmember. Once that was done, it was just a matter of wiggling the crossmember out. Alright, so there she is. That's the factory R34 lower crossmember. You can see how simple and so small it is compared to other K-members you might find in other cars. It's something that's kind of new to me, mainly because I've been dealing with front-wheel drive cars that have 3 mounts in the front rather than 2 on most of these rear-wheel drive cars. So as you saw in the little clip there, I had a little bit of an issue getting it out, mainly because of this lower control arm here. Didn't want to come down as far as I wanted it to, so I undid the detention rod, and of course the whole thing dropped out as soon as I did that. And now I've got this mad steering angle here for my drift car, which is not actually going to drift. But anyway, so that's out. The other side I left the same. I didn't undo the tension rod because once I got this down low enough and pulled the control arm out, I could then just slide the crossbar towards me this way, and then the other side dropped out, and then I could pull it out. And of course, in the engine bay, the steering rack is just hanging there. Obviously, this car is going to need a good alignment once I put it back together, but I figured it'd come up pretty easy, so that's not too bad. So now, before I go ahead and show you the other cross member and get that put in, I'm going to take some other stuff out while I'm kind of in here. The sway bar is going to cause some clearance issues, I believe. So I'm going to pull the front sway bar out just to make sure it's not in the way when I go to drop the engine in. Down here we have the factory side mount intercooler, which served its purpose well. It's not like there's anything really wrong with it, but it's just not big enough and it isn't cool looking enough, so that's got to come out. It also needs to come out to make some room for the plumbing for the new intercooler. So let's get started on that. It should be pretty simple. Removing the factory side mount intercooler is pretty straightforward. It was just a matter of removing the upper couplers from inside the engine bay and then a number of 10mm bolts holding the intercooler and intercooler brackets to the car. Well guys, that's it for this episode of the Skyline build. Make sure that if you liked the video to hit the like button and give it a share. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of the build. As always, I'm Garrett and I'll see you next time on Pistonhead Garage.